I was hiring my composers according to their strength on very specific styles, because we were covering a large catalog of games with different styles, like racing games, like adventure games, puzzle. And but that was my way to keep hands on the thing and still navigate through it. And with my composer teams, I was in the middle of that, so I was evolving with them at some point. It was like giving direction and showing by example, but then receive from them what they were doing. And it's also, some new food as well. It participate to keep me up to date of many things and different styles as well, because we had 30 people on the creative side, sound designers, composers, and I was hiring my composers according to their strength on very specific styles, because we were covering a large catalog of games with different styles, like racing games, like adventure games, puzzle, Disney stuff, and a lot of variety. Everyone was super strong at what they were doing, and I was learning from them too. So that was fun. It's so fun.
So when you were hiring them, talking about people watching them be applying, what kind of things did you look for in the packet that they sent to you? Obviously the music.
Well, to me, okay. So sometimes I was receiving portfolios or resumes, and most importantly portfolios. So I was listening to what they were doing, and again, this language thing is, to me, sometimes I was receiving something top-notch, super well mixed and mastered, wow, good quality, but it doesn't talk. There's nothing there. There is no catch. There is no. It's flat. It's a beautiful flat. It's a really well made piece of wood. It's super flat. But in terms of it doesn't. What are you talking to? What do you want to? What do you want to tell?
Like that. You can polish crap so much.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It looks like shiny now. Look at that. It's like, wow. But it's not crap. But it's just, I don't know. It's flat. There's no language. There's nothing. What kind of emotion do you want to? No magic, And sometimes I was preferring hiring someone who has this strength. Okay, this guy is talking. Wow, there's emotion. There is and whatever the style was, could be EDM, could be electronic. At least there's wow, tons of ideas here, and the way he does these risers and stuff, and then his punchline here, and wow, there's a dynamic going on, and in this style, And for the classical thing, it was also about what kind of this guy mixing sound design with within his melody and stuff, but what tells me the melody is that's nice, I like this guy. It sounds a bit crappy, the mix wasn't perfect, but you know what? This is technical things you can learn, so it's fine. And after some interviews and stuff, it's okay, let's come on board, and because everyone was with everyone all the time, so it's kind of a group of people exchanging all day long. So, someone with very strong technically for mixing, there was hey, can you help me mixing my string track? He said, yeah, sure, you have to do that, and you can add this compressor here. It's that's cool. And people learning, teaching, learning, teaching. Yeah, exactly, kind of, but on the production way. It's we have to deliver quickly and good quality all the time. So that was very challenging. But very, very rich in experience from and to everyone, So it was very good and very good team. So my first criteria was no ego at all. I don't want any ego in that team because it created bad moods, and it's you don't do that for yourself, or you're not whoever you are. It doesn't matter. The person is what you're doing was more important, and the cohesive experience as a group, So that was the real deal for me.
So this might give away a little bit of your secret, but how do you test for ego? Like George Clooney, he takes an executive out to a lunch meeting, and if the guy's rude to the waiter, because he's way below him, quote unquote, he won't work with him.
Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
So because that's a huge thing, trying to deal with ego. And actually, I interviewed John Beasley for this site as well, And he was saying it's not always how well you play. It's like how well can you get along with other people.
Exactly.
Because you're pretty much married for whatever you're on a tour
of course,
or a job
or for a project, or for yeah, of course. I don't know. I think it's like just meeting people, and you have a sense of. Sometimes you can actually detect that on some resumes. You know, like. You learn. I mean, I've learned. You know, I've made some mistakes. You know, I happens like I think I've made like 3 mistakes. You know, hiring people in 10 years, and I was like, oh, shit, no, this guy is not a good fit. And try not to do the same mistake again. You know, and so I think it's really about because we all are artists. So I think we can feel that when you talk with someone. You can feel, you know, the people like he wants just to show off, or like I've done that and that. It's like just talking about himself, you know, this kind of stuff. So yeah, no, we don't need that in that group. So despite, I mean, I rejected like great talented people, but because of the way they behave, the way they. I don't know. It's very hard to explain, but it's more like it's more like a feelings thing, you know. Like you kind of feel it, and you can tell. It's like, I wish I could have. I wish I could have that guy because of the quality of his work, but it's not going to be a fit on the team, and it's going to break the balance that we have. So sometimes I was like, no, okay, we're gonna wait. We're gonna find someone else.
Right.
So it's tricky sometimes because like, and you have to fight against yourself sometimes, and because I want that guy badly, but or that girl, you know, like, and but no, it doesn't fit and stuff. So you see that through interviews and stuff. So sometimes I had like some audio directors, former audio directors that were applying for a lead position or lead sound designer. And they were like, oh my God, look at the resume, it's kind of a golden path. You know, it's like, oh my God, you're for Ubisoft, for THQ, blah, blah, blah. Like, wow, insane. It's like, but, you know, be fair with everyone has to do that test, you know, and it turns out I was receiving one of the worst tests ever. The guy was like, what? No, what you done? Why? You know, why is it so bad? No. Oh, you know. So that sometimes you have like big stars in the industry and they apply it and they're not able to make a simple test with just to give the quality. You know, what sense of quality? What is your language as a you know? What kind of quality you can bring to us?
And you know, with big actors too, they can't audition well.
Oh yeah.
You know, they're just like, oh, I can't audition. Like you got an Oscar award, and they're so like, no, I can't audition. You know. So I think it happens at every stage of your career. Like some people can test really well, audition well, others can't. You know.
Yeah.
So how do you keep from losing somebody who's really good but they just can't audition well?
Oh, do you mean the test itself?
Yeah.
Oh, so it was depending. So I was making a test for. I had different tests for different category of things because we had like different composers, and so of course if I hire a composer is going to be mostly focusing on orchestral stuff. Had a test on that. I mean, like write, 30 seconds of that for that level. Think about we were sending a trailer, for instance, or a part of a game. It was like the video capture of a gameplay without sound, or with sound design if it was for composers, and without music and without sound for sound design, so they can make the sound design with the music in background, this kind of stuff, because both are very related, and that's part of this is actually part of the test. It's like if you do a sound design but you don't listen to the score which is there, you kind of miss the thing because everything must be cohesive between the music and at some point, you know, and vice versa.
Actually, we did this film. We auditioned 150 composers for a film.
Oh,
it was crazy.
Wow!
It was like the director, he was nuts.
Oh wow!
So they listened to it, but the guy who stood out, just cream of the crop. He mixed in sound design and scoring, and I had another friend who was like number 2 in there, and we're just like, man, that guy just had it together. You know, it's just like that combination of that two was magical, which I never even thought about till he did it. You know? So yeah, it's great that you mentioned that. You know, mixing the sound design with the score.
It's not only that, because like what you're talking about is more like embedding sound design within the score and everything. Like I was talking more like to the composer to have consciousness of the sound design which is already in the game that we show. And so the question is like, will he take advantage of that or not? Will he make, you know, kind of similarities, or kind of oh, the UI sounds like that. Maybe I could use the same similar texture in my music to make it fit within this ecosystem, for instance, or not. You know, that's a choice.
Which is very similar. Is that you
Kind of, yeah.
The sound design.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just you don't necessarily embed sound design in your music, but you pay attention to your environment. As a composer, you're part of that experience. And you have to, you know, take care of listening to where everything is around, and not being. And that was a big part of the test as well. It's like you, in terms of noticing someone who is open and really care about the whole experience, or just care about this piece of music, putting somewhere. You know, there's a huge difference.
Which kind of goes back to your first lesson of, you know, breaking down John Williams' score. You know, can you hear all those pieces?
Yeah.
You know, I think. Do you ever watch Rick Beato on YouTube?
The what? Which
Rick
one?
Beato. Well, he's got a great YouTube channel.
Oh, no, I don't know.
It's like everything music.
Oh, cool.
Theory.
Yeah, send it to me.
Yeah. But it's like saying, like, the most important skill of a musician is listen. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, how well can you listen?
Right.
So it's not just ear training, but everything, the whole environment.
Exactly.
So,
it's very important, yeah. And it's and music to picture is the same. It's like picture is your environment.
Right.
So really, you really have to, and I'm not talking about technical things like being synced with that and put the riser 2 bars before. Yes, it's part of it, but it's not only that. It's like you have to be you know, like parallel to what the director wants to communicate throughout his picture. And then it's like, so it's I remember this beautiful movie Nell.
Jodie Foster?
Yeah, Jodie Foster, and I think Mark Isham and Liam Neeson, but the composer was Mark Isham, or Isham, I don't know how to pronounce. And I love the score so much. It was, oh my God, it was so connected with the character. When she looked at the mirror, she looked at herself on the mirror, and she has like, she's kind of dancing, like looking at herself. I felt that moment on the music was so connected, like really into. He was really into that character. No cheating. It's not possible. The way the music goes with that moment is like, oh my God, it's so like parallel, and it's like really, they share the same, they communicate the exact same language through 2 different medias, and it was like, wow, that was beautiful.
So talking about coming from as a musician who's in a band, it's funny.
Okay.
I see it on my Facebook feed. A lot of the musicians, trends, you know, going into composing.
Yeah.
And they're sending me, hey, check this out. How does this sound for the
which was a bit different because I wanted to be a composer before, have to pay my bills and then play.
Oh, okay. So you were already in that composing route.
I wanted badly to be there. It was I couldn't start like that, you know. So I had to start with something else, meaning playing and you know, as a keyboardist and drummers and stuff.
So what kind of advice would you tell them, like switching over from a musician in a band to being a composer?
Wow.
Like you mentioned, like that connection with Nell when she's dancing, just like making the music character as well as the actors.
I mean, it depends on what kind of media you're composing for. If it's for film, you have to love what you watch. I mean, you have to love picture, you have to love movies, but like sincerely and deeply, I think. Otherwise, you can pass. You know, you can be. You're not on the same way, on the same road. So first, you have to feel. You know, you have to feel what the director wants to communicate throughout these different. This is very important, and be touched by whatever happens. You know, and be part of that whole thing as a whole. You know, not just you putting some music on, and you know. So I think it's. It depends. You know, it's like if it's a documentary, if it's a movie, the immersion, the level of immersion and work itself is different. The approach is different.
Can you talk a little bit about? Can you talk a little bit about the differences in your approach from a documentary versus, say, like a dramatic feature?
So, yeah, documentary usually there is a narrator. Like, I mean, most of the time you have a narrator on the back. So I take that narrator part as part of my composing process because he's present. And it's not only about ducking music and on and off and on and off, but I actually take advantage of that pacing on the way the narrator is going to speak as part of my pacing and music, so tempo, whatever, or the way I'm going to articulate things and stuff like that. So again, I try to be in a cohesive way with everything, not only the picture, but because it's a documentary, I have this narrator on the top, which is telling things. So I have to, make sure I am underscore when I need to be underscore because it's saying something very important. I don't want to be bird on the top, like all the choirs and stuff, and there's and the no. You have to listen. Again, it's you have to understand what the message is in that documentary, whatever it is, and try to balance things. And again, it's the way. The goal is to have a dynamic. So like I love thinking about waves like that, like tension and like calm moment and tension again and calm moment, like a balance, like a dynamic. If the picture, depending on the picture, of course, it's always being with the picture. I feel like a boat, following the flow and the waves on the sea. So you can't go against that, otherwise you're gonna crash. So somehow you fail your job if you're not following the flow. So you have to really follow the flow of that documentary or movie or whatever, and to be aligned, always to be aligned what the message is.
But when you're working, the film's not done. You work earlier stages of the film where
it depends.
Or they give you the final cut.
Usually close to final cut. I mean, there's always like some final, a few bits, some chops here and there. So you have to technically, but then it's just a technical thing. Most of my work was like with scenes, block of scenes all connected together that like the storyboard. So we have like, this is the final cut somehow. We're going to put that before that and that and that and that. It's not like necessarily the final timing and all this kind of stuff. But we have the main picture of all that. That's the most important. You have to have this whole picture because there is a beginning and there's the end. That makes you feel more cohesive in your process as well, because you can take advantage of what happened here. You know what? I'm gonna this little idea that I have for that part. I can use that thing for that scene here. That's gonna be recalled. There will be I'm gonna create a connection between those two events because they use similar components or characters or object or whatever the subject is. And so that's why it's important to have the whole picture, at least even if it's not final, but have the overall thing ready so you can start. And then it's just technical things. If you're too fast, if you're too slow, you can play around the tempo, you can shorten some part. You can think about, I'm gonna do like a 2/4 to finish that part and transit to that. What I can use? I can use sound design to hide my stuff, make a better transition, and I'm gonna do that according to what's happening right now. There's like, I don't know, something passing through the screen. I'm going to take that from end to end, from top to end. I'm going to take that as my transition. It's like you have to always. It's like looking at a painting. It's like I'm going to grab some stuff here and there, and it's going to be my anchors.
And so, what are you using to notate that? Like, so your first pass of watching the movie, you're like, I see a theme here that I'm going to bring up at minute 42. How are you writing that down? Is it on a score? Is it on notepads?
No, I just sketching on my DAW and
in real time with the movie.
Yeah, I just import the movie and I just like and I just like put some markers and stuff and I say this is like something, and I can add a specific name for the markers that is connected to another session when I want to be just alone, just focusing on the music itself. And then that becomes the piece I have to consult later on, and then I know that this piece can be useful for that markers, what happened here. And then I just have my palette. So I have my palette of different ideas, and I can how can I arrange all that? There's this thing for this thing. How can I connect to that? And again, this is more like my Michael Field inspirations, the way it transitions things to things, and harmonically, rhythmically, sometimes out of the box, like out of nowhere, like super arch, but sometimes can work. So I take that experience to actually help me edit all these things. together and keep everything cohesive throughout the whole movie.
Do you ever read the script at all, or are you just strictly with the movie?
I mean, it depends. I mean, when it's a documentary, you have the script because it's the narrator basically, and you have like, and it's a lot of conversation with the director and the producers, and you know, you have to feel the thing first. Right. It's a very important to be right away. Yeah. Like to really understand, to be on the same page with his vision, right. Because it is, you know, otherwise you're out. Yeah.
It's funny because when you were talking about the sine wave, it was just immediately reminded me of the screenwriting book I read.
Oh.
Robert McKee, and it's talking about the energy of the scene. Mm-hmm. It's like you got the positive scene. It was like, you know, like
right.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's about to die. There's gonna be a really happy scene. So now there's a much bigger drop.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like this. It calls it like charges, like positive charge. Negative
yeah,
charge.
Exactly.
And then it's funny because the score is following that same, you know, the screenwriting thing.
Yeah. So. And what's better than being on the score because of reasons, because you know that's going to happen and you want the music to shine at that moment. If you're on a single line, you won't communicate this level of energy and emotion. You have to go down and whenever it's possible, because you know that you need that charge of emotion at some points, and you need to have this balance prepared in your mind and within the timeline, you know, like checking everything and say, okay, this is the opportunity for me to get on the score because I need to shine at that moment to support whatever emotion is going on, you know, this kind of stuff.
What was the very first score you ever written? Just so you know, like your first, like I want to score to this. Like I have friends, they grab a trailer from a Sundance film.
Oh, you mean like an exercise?
Like an exercise.
Wow. I think when I was, at some point I was like, in still at conservatoire, and I was like meeting this guy, a friend of my mom, and he was like passionate about photography, film, and stuff like that. He was shooting whatever things in the countryside and stuff like that. It was like a hobby, you know. But I was going to his place every day because he has full life equipment, and it was like it was Disney World for me. It was like whoa, and I don't know. He was like he was doing kinesiotherapy, you know, kine. No, you know, massage and stuff. Uh-huh. So, but a medical thing, okay. But downstairs on a cave, they had all these toys, and I was like going to his place a lot, and as that's a way I've learned some stuff as well, you know. And one day he had like this VHS camera, whatever, and I was like put the thing on, and I think that was the first time I tried myself scoring something. It was like no story, no whatever. It's just whatever. Right. And like that was out of the blue, and I was like, okay, trying things. And I was like, coming back, rewind, and it's like that. This is bad. And try again. Right. So I think this is the way I tried. So it was like a lot of self-teaching at some point, and I was very solitary, you know, in my own stuff. I wasn't very not social, but you know, I was so specific and so picky on my stuff that I didn't want to have anyone around me to disturb me. I wasn't very social in that way, so I was very focusing on my thing. So Gameloft helped me a lot to evolve in that sense, because I was suddenly responsible for a group of people and working with collaboration with a lot of people. So that actually helped me. Right. You know, this kind of stuff. So
how is that transitioning from documentary and narrative going to video games?
I think where all the thing I've done helped a lot is the variety of styles I've covered. As a musician, you know, it's just like playing stuff, covered or compositions, which is like depend on jazz and Latin jazz and pop and whatever, African and stuff. So all that mix up helped me a lot, because I could cover. We have a game. It's in Africa, and there's like something with animals and stuff. So I know how to score that, and I was like helping actually others, just for the percussion part, because I knew how to do that kind of stuff. So, and I think my experience helped me a lot to cover a lot of genres of games later on. You were talking about the transition.
Yeah, go from like narrative feature or narrative film, documentary film into video games.
So the big change was the way you compose. you're not composing for a linear. You don't have an end, beginning and end. You don't have a timeline. It's not linear at all. So you have to think differently, completely differently. It's actually a very challenging way to approach music and music composition, because it can go against a lot of your values, or not values, but your way to work or your way to communicate musically. Because if you're used to compose on linear stuff, you can develop your language throughout one timeline, and you have like a book, first word, last word, and yeah, first note, last note, and that's it. That's my piece. That's my piece. And but here it's totally different, because you're totally dependent on the user, on the player. The player is free. I mean, I don't know if it's an open world game, for instance.
Which means what?
Open world, meaning like the player can go anywhere, like RPG, I don't know, type of games, that it can go anywhere, having some tasks, following a main adventure, you have to go places. Open world means like you can walk, and like the game is made with a big map, and you can travel within this map, for instance, and with a lot of things going on in there. And if we take this example, you can't score that. It's impossible, because you're totally dependent on the player. If the player decide to walk and to explore things, you have to support that moment. But then he switched when you have an encounter with some enemies and stuff he has to fight, for instance. So everything must change right away. So, and nothing is planned, because it's according to what he decides to go, when he decides to go to that path. So you have to think the music differently. You have to support. So we have. It's complex, but depending on the region as well. He moves to a city, to another, to a plain, to a forest, and then he moves to a cave, and then whatever. So you have to support all these environments. So the difference is like your storyboard is actually the map. So what happens in the map? So you have the forest, you have the cave, you have the mysterious thing, you have the city 1, city 2, 3, 4. This one is very modern, this one is very tribal, this one, you have different flavors of cities, let's see, and you have like characters, and you have like, you have cinematics, because you have, cutscenes and stuff like that. So you have a bit of linear stuff still going on specific moments that the player is going to trigger, because he's passing a checkpoint on the map, so that will trigger a cutscene, for instance. So you have to think about all that all the time. Okay, we are in this forest, so I have my forest music playing, and it's looped, because it's looped. You have different techniques. You can make one piece looped forever, which is depending on how big the forest is and how long the player can be in that forest. It can last long. So you have to think about the length of your music, or the technique that you're going to use for creating that music. Could be just a piece of music looped, if the place is small enough and you're not gonna stay a lot. But if there's a lot to do in that forest, you have to think the music approach differently. So maybe you have like different chunks of different pieces of music that have their own begin and end, but they're all the same kind of flavor. And maybe you can insert some silence in between, but this is all managed through an audio engine. So it's not a DAW. It's an interactive tool. This is where you actually create some all the music you made. For instance, you put that into what they call containers, and there's like you have different type of containers. You have like random containers. So that means that within this container, you're gonna pick a piece of music totally randomly, and you can decide how it's gonna behave in between. For instance, it's kind of complex to. But it gives you the endless possibilities of creating.
What's that software called?
You have like two major ones are WYs, so it's two W's, and so Y's, but with two W's. And the other one is FMOD, FMOD, and Wise is probably the most popular, the most used nowadays, but very, very complex. I mean, in terms of, it's very rich. You can do everything you want.
And that's just for audio, or is it for both video?
No, it's just for audio.
Just for audio.
Just for audio. Then that means that then you have a game engine that manage everything, the graphics, the gameplay, all the different rules, and the music as well. So basically, you call what we call events. So the music is going to be an event. So you call an audio event, and that audio event could be sound as well, because the player is drawing his sword. So if the animation starts, then it calls the audio event that goes with this animation. This is how we sync stuff, you know.
Right.
So shing, that's going to be not triggered through the picture. It's going to be because if it's an event. So we have this animation, and we do the sound according to the length of that animation, and that's it. Now the game engine will trigger. Okay, we need to trigger that animation. So trigger the animation and call the audio event that goes with, and everything goes sync all together. So this is how it works, and so you have to think totally differently. Your musical world is totally broken into different, and you have to make it as if it were a movie, which is even more complex because, again, you have to make everything cohesive throughout the different possibilities, and sometimes you have endless possibilities, and you still have to keep the player immersed, and and in this thing as it sounds natural, and as if he was watching a movie as well, where he is the character, So it's totally different approach.
Man, it's funny because this is the first time I'm actually talking to somebody who does a video game, scoring for that, and so because I've always done narrative.
Right. Yeah.
So So when you first approach a project like a movie, you sit there and watch the whole movie. But what are you doing here? You play the video game?
So that's different because sometimes you can't, because the game's
being built.
Yeah, the problem is you can't wait until the game is done because everybody's gonna wait for you. Hey, we're done. Yeah. It's not that we're waiting, but so you have to participate from the very early in the process. So even in pre-production, so because you have to know what's the plan. So it's kind of similar to what a storyboard will be. So here's the plan. We have this open world. We have this. It's going to be a forest, and it's going to be this character, and this story is about that, and it's going to be the enemy. So the combat system will work like that and like that. Okay. So you take note, basically what's going to happen and how. So they define a way to, okay, this combat system will work that way. You have it's gonna fight, and then if the main player gauge is gonna be low in life, for instance, that for me that's a good opportunity to actually show the player that is in danger, really big time. So I'm gonna take advantage of that level of gauge, life gauge, and I'm gonna maybe trigger something. I'm gonna maybe trigger like a little stinger of things that's gonna accentuate the action, because people will not necessarily watch at this gauge because they were focusing on the action. So audio helps a lot the user, the player, to say, hey, something's going on, you should watch me or you should watch your life because something's happening and you're about to die. But maybe it's the same music, and thanks to Wise, for instance, I can add another track, just one instrument. Maybe, I don't know, it could be like a very harshly tremolo strings following the piece, but parallelly, which is as soon as the gauge become at 30% of life left. So this is the way I trigger my event of these strings, and that's gonna wake up the user and say, oh, something's wrong because I hear this weird musical part on the top of my music, combat music, and oh, I'm about to die. Oh, okay, flee. And flee, okay, you flee the combat. I don't know.
Pausing you there. So when you start going to 30%, are you thinking, okay, now I'm going to go more dissonant? So
yes,
now I'm going to add
exactly.
minor second to this.
Exactly,
thing.
yeah. So you just prepare. You say, okay, I have to prepare that track. So I have my main track, my main combat track, but I have to think about all the other tracks around that I will eventually need. So I have this stinger here, and okay, what if the player decides to flee? I need a transition for that. So you can, with tools like Wise, you can easily say, okay, trigger the next event in the next 2 bars, or the next bar, or the next beat, and then you have to compose this little 2 beats or 2 bars of music. That's gonna be compatible with whatever you've written so far. And with crossfades, maybe it's going to be crossfade with this track to the stinger, or to this transition piece that's going to bring you back to the main forest theme that you were before the combat, for instance.
So you're dealing with this in the DAW, but then you have to reference the others.
The DAW is just to make to write the things. Then you export all these in different files, and those files are imported into the audio engine that manages everything. This is where you orchestrate your music somehow.
But sometimes when you listen to it, you're like, that's not working in the DAW because I'm not hearing the mix in the DAW that I hear in that audio.
So that's why, like for instance, for that combat track with the dissonant part, you compose that on the same project because you know that you need that, and you need to, whatever happens, you want that to follow at some point.
Like another track.
Yeah, like another. The only thing is that you just export that track separately.
Got it.
And you mute it when you export the rest.
Okay.
And so you have your score plus the track, and they have the same length, and so that means that it's going to follow. And then the engine is just taking care of everything. So yeah, it's triggered the both track, and it's just basically a real-time parameter control that's going to decide that you control, or the game control afterwards through an event. That's going to, okay, I'm going to add this track because as long as the gauge become closer to the end, and I have a parameter that goes the same way, but just going to raise the volume of that track. It depends on context and what type of action, what kind of possibilities you can do according to whatever happens. If it's an action scene, if it's like a sometimes you can have I don't know, like you're in a city and then you have like background music for. Yeah, a good example would be Nintendo does that a lot. You can have like a main background for the city, for instance. And for some reason, you begin the game and you start in that city. The music is very light, for instance. There are just few tracks, and just give you the feel. And it's a nice city. It's like enjoy and stuff like that. But it's very like view percussion, a bit of maybe a marimba and maybe like a cello, whatever, something very simple. But then you evolve in the game. And then you have to come back to that city, and depending on your position in the adventure of the game or your level or whatever, you could decide that whenever the player comes back to that city, there is more instruments playing that makes the city richer in terms of so after the marimba could have not the cello but maybe a small ensemble of strings now, and maybe you could have like some woodwinds going on. Then he has to go back to something, and then he goes back later, and then you have like the full piece with like horn and stuff. You're free to do whatever you want according to whatever is possible in the game and what you want to bring. Again, it's a lot of discussion with the game directors, and they want to say, that'll be cool to have the sense of evolution of the city because you can bring this, you can build stuff, so everything is a potential anchor for you to create something interactive or with a sense of evolution. That's why it's very interesting against something linear. I love both worlds, but and I really do, but game is very challenging but in a good way. It's like it gives you tons of possibility in a creative way because of that.
Like
if you're in a city in a movie, you're stuck to that city, and you're going to be your time is score that city background music, and that's it. It's going to be part of the movie, and it will never evolve. And unless you decide later to repeat that track with more stuff, that possibility. But in game, it's like it totally depends on the player and what the player decides to do. Sometimes this music is good, but if the player decides to stay an hour in the city, maybe he's going to be bored about that. So maybe you can decide that after 15 minutes, you can either go back to that simple instrumentation, or just to fade the volume slow and go back to silence and maybe raise the sound design, have more ambience and stuff like that.
Which you told me that's one of the things you did when you were first starting off. You just let the character sit there without making any movement.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Exactly. Yeah, I like to do that a lot because what kind of system they used and stuff. What can I do? Is it broken? Basically try to break it.
Right.
Try to how things can go wrong.
Okay, so in terms of working, you have to start much earlier in the game process as well as film.
Exactly. Because the final cut is the only chance to get something cohesive from top to end. That doesn't mean you can't work on small part at some point to get ideas and stuff like that, to start sketchings, and to communicate that to the director. Do you think that for that scene it could be nice? But then it's your role to reorganize things to make them connectable through each other. You know, like okay, I have this scene now, but that's why it's important to have then the whole picture, and then to connecting all your ideas and make a full cohesive piece. As for game, is like it's like really in pre-production where you're actually talking about, you're just taking note about everything is possible in the game, what are the rules, what are the mechanics that are going to be used for what and for that and that, different scenarios and battles, and what is your players stay idle for a while, this kind of rules. And then you take note and you schedule and you prepare. Okay, I need that track, I need that track, I need that track for that, I need 5 tracks for that moment, and I want them to be random or whatever the rule you decide to be.
Now, you as a musician, are you thinking same key center, like
could be.
relative keys?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes it's a good collaboration with sound designers, because the sound designer will do some sounds, and there will be like UI sounds that pop up all the time. So
what sounds?
UI, user interface sounds that like a pop-up message or whatever,
Okay.
And then it's a collaboration. Sometimes sound designer will need a bit of musical element in their sound, so you can help them out with that, or they can do it themselves if they're all right with that. And then it's a real collaboration between the two worlds. Like yep.
Awesome, man. That's great. What's on your bucket list, like musically?
At some point, I would like to continue, maybe not going back, because I'm still doing some stuff sometimes on the side a bit. But I love the video game experience, and I want to work for that. And Magic Leap is something different, so it's interesting. And composing for the operating system, and it's a bit different. And different experiences, not only video games but experiences. But coming back to linear, sometimes I like balance. So I like both worlds. So maybe one day going back to film scoring, I'd love to.
Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks so much for hearing me.
Pleasure. Thank you.
So where can people find out more about your work and you?
Well, right now I'm working at Magic Leap, so it's an incredible company that does mixed reality device. So it's through that for now, but it's like not open to public yet. I have a SoundCloud. I have to take care of my website that is open since ages, and I didn't work on that.
What's the site?
It's my name. It's arnaudgaland.com. Yeah, I have to make it. I have to find. I have a draft.
Every artist has that issue. Like
I know. I'm very bad at that.
You're not the only one.
All right.